Okay, so we're continuing Siman Tzadik, the last two Seifim, Gimel and Daled, dealing with Chal. We left off last time with the reason for why some would hold that the Chal will be Asr. I mean, that's the din. The Gemara is that the Chal is Asr if it fell and there was no Shishim, and even if there is Shishim, there may not be a problem legabe the other meat, but there is a problem legabe the chal itself. The chal is unique in that we said that it's mitzvah for shishim because it's a Rabbanon, it's not real Basar bechalv, it's chalav shchuta and so forth, and because it's midivrehim midrabanon, we are lenient in various situations, including that we can consider it again, even if it fell again in another part of Isser, in another part of Heter, that is, and it causes a problem, of course, of being cooked with other meat. So the Shishim is always required. The Chal is part of the Shishim, is only 59, but nonetheless, in any case, the Chal remains Asur. It becomes like a Chaticha of Nevela, Chaticha Asur, as the Mechaber says, and there are various explanations given as to why that is so.
Is this actually as a din of Balua? Or
in a sense, it becomes an Isra Machmas Asmo right now, but we're going to discuss it next. Okay. That's what I meant by Chanan, by Basar bechalv de Rabbanon. Perhaps that's where that fits in. But it's a Chumrah. It's a Chumrah, and there are various explanations given as to what the Makor for this Chumrah is.
I'll tell you what I'm asking.
Go ahead.
When you read it in the second time it falls into the bar, then with respect to this particular detail, it's not acting like it's a Maksum, acting more like it's a Balua. If the second part it falls into, you said it can still act again as part of the sixth, right?
Yeah, but we're always going to need Shishin Keneged the whole thing, right?
Yeah, that's in terms of volume.
Yes.
You don't know how much milk it contains.
Right.
So you're assuming the worst case scenario that the whole thing was milk itself.
Yes.
But with respect to in that respect, it would be, in terms of defining the volume of 60 you need, it would be like an Ismach Mazatzma. In terms of being mitzvah to the heter in order to compose the 60, to compute the 60,
right,
it would be unlike an Ismach Mazatzma.
Yes, in a sense, yes, because what is the problem here is the chalav in the kachal, as we said, and not the kachal itself. It's the chalav that has come out and has combined with other basar, has absorbed the tam of the basar, and becomes a chalav, which is also because of basar b'chalav, as opposed to the kachal in itself was never asur to begin with.
Right.
So you're right, yeah, you can say that. Yeah. And the explanations that we gave were as follows in the Rishonim. Tosfos and the Rosh hold that since the basar of the kachal is not a problem, it's only the chalav that is in the gumos, in the pockets, and that's the one that received the Tama Basar. At the time it did receive the Tama Basar, it became Asr. And even though later on throughout the cooking process there's going to be Shishim, and once there's Shishim we say that the whole thing is going to come out supposedly, and should be Batul B'Shishim, the Chal remains Asr because they were concerned that if we permit it at the end of the Bishul process, this is the Rosh and the Tosfos, if we permit it at the end of the Bishul process, once everything has come out, somebody may come to eat it even in the beginning, when not all the milk has come out. And we did also explain that to get out that milk, once you start cooking the kachal, is difficult, once you've cooked it. In other words, either you got it out before, or you're going to have a hard time getting it out later. Once it starts to cook, it's hard to get it out. So here there's a concern that even though throughout the cooking process there's shishim, the whole thing comes out, you may come to eat it before all the milk has come out. And I think this is a little bit similar, even though it's a somewhat of a different svara here, because it's a chumrah, because we're concerned it's a gzera, you may come to eat it before. The Rashba says that it's similar to other situations that we've seen in Hilchos Taaruvot, that there's no way to know that the whole thing came out. All the chalaf came out. You cannot know for sure. It's similar to the Efshel Esoichta situation. You can never be sure that it has come out completely. The Ran is the only one that said that the whole issue here is a Maris Ayin, which is very interesting. He says that Maris Ayin means that people who eat this kachal will assume that even if you have a real Isser Nevela being cooked in this pot, and you recognize it, even though you have shish, everything else is mutter, the Isser Nevela remains Aser. And they might think otherwise. Oh, I was able to eat the cow, why can't I eat the Isser? And the Isser Nevela always remains Isser Nevela. So, the Ran is saying the whole thing is more, the Chumrah here of Asering the Chal, even though there was shish, the Chal remains Aser, is a Maris Einishim. Alright. We went into the Rabbi Akiva Eger in discussing the issue here of Efshel Esoichtoi. Does it apply? Does it not apply? Efshel Esoichtoi really may not apply over here because it's the whole situation is a little bit different. No, because
the prohibition of Efshel Esoichtoi.
Yeah, no.
The permission of
Because remember, Efshel Esoichtoi was a proposition that was mentioned in Tosfos itself at the end of Tosfos, even though he doesn't bring that as the main reason why this is Asur, because of Efshel Esoichtoi Asur, which we hold later on in the Taaruvot. Efshel Esoichtoi just basically says once something has become Asur, it cannot become permitted. You cannot squeeze out. You cannot remove the Isser from it, even though the processes are there to chemically remove any vestige through cooking, right? But we don't know that, according to the Rashba, if all of it left. Even though...
question regarding the terminology.
But the Efshel Esoichtoi, it has nothing to do with knowing if it left or not.
Right.
That's the thing. That's the chiddush of Efshel Esoichtoi is Asur, that once it's become Asur, I think it's also based, if I remember correctly from the Taaruvot, it is somewhat based on the fact that we don't know if all of it left too. Remember that? There was a dion on that. What if you really can't tell that you removed every molecule, I guess we could use, of the Isser? What then? Remember that? There was a dion on that. Yeah.
But quick question.
Yeah.
Efshel Esoichtoi.
Yeah.
Because of the terminology. Efshel Esoichtoi really translated means out.
Yes.
Efshal.
Right.
So Efshal Esoichtoi is Asur, are we saying even you can squeeze it out, it's Asur? Is this Efshal Esoichtoi is Asur to say that it's not possible to completely and therefore it's... What is the intention of saying Efshal Esoichtoi Asur?
No, even though you can.
Even though you can.
Even though
so
you
the
can.
whole you can completely move the Isser and yet it remains Asur.
Yes, it remains Asur, yes.
Huh.
That's exactly, yeah. That's.
And there's the one who holds that you can't remove Isser?
Well, that's the whole question. That's really part of the question in Hilchos Taaruvot is it possible? It's not possible completely, and therefore it's Asur.
So we're saying because it's not possible.
Because it's not possible. That's part of the diyun over there. Because it's not exactly 100% possible.
So when we say Efshal,
or we don't know. You know, it was some. I don't remember right now.
We can't establish for a fact that in each and every case we will be able to move it.
That's for sure.
We can't take that for granted.
That's for sure. We can't take that for granted.
So it should be called Efshal Esoichtoi. ובגלל זה אסור.
Yes. Yeah.
So Efshal Esoichtoi really is saying, since we cannot assume that this is possible each and every time,
right.
It could be impossible at some times. So therefore, okay.
Right. The question therefore there is partially the problem over there is that it is not possible to ascertain that all of it is out. So anyway, but here Rabbi Akiva Eger had a question. I mean, we said that he did have a whole issue here. Because here, the only thing that really became Asur here was the Chalav and not the Basar. Chal is only Asur because of the Chalav in it,
right?
Not because the Chal itself.
Returned into the.
But if you were to cook it and all the Chal and all the Chalav would come out of the Chal, then what's the problem with the Chal, right? In other words, if you can actually remove it.
Quick question. We said the problem is the.
In other words, as we explained in the name of the Madani Yontev, that Efshel Esoichtoi, you only say when something has become Asur for a moment. So it becomes Asur, and it continues to be Asur, but the Chal is really not Asur. It's just a Chalav. If you can take out that Chalav that's causing the problem, then why shouldn't you be able to say Efshel Esoichtoi in this case? What should apply, as Taisa says. All right, anyway. You follow me? In other words, he says the whole idea of Efshel Esoichtoi really is when something has become Asur, the status is it's Asur. The Chal never really becomes Asur. It's only also because of the Chalav in it. If you can somehow get that Chalav out, then you're okay. It's not that the Chal is Asur.
Always the Esoichtoi that it contains something you can't get out, something that an Isser Machmas Atzmo even for a moment.
Yeah, but here we're saying we're saying you can get when you're shishim. Suppose we're saying you can get all the Chalav out, right?
But my question is a different question.
Yeah.
Isn't the case of Efshal Esoichtoi always a heter with an Isser Balua? And the Efshar Lesochto is telling us that since the Isser that's inside, we can't get rid of it completely, therefore we cannot permit whatever contains the Isser.
Yeah, but in those
The
cases...
case that you were saying, where the Isser itself became, where the heter itself became Isser.
Right.
Now this is the Kachal.
The Kachal
would that be Hanan?
Yeah, that's what we're saying. That's what we're going to explain now. That's the next point. Kachal never became Aser. The Chalav in the Kachal became Aser. That is a big difference.
But you were just saying in the name of
that
the only time we say Efshar Lesochto is not, it applies is when the heter became an Isser itself.
That's right. The heter becomes an Isser with an Isser Balua.
So the heter doesn't become an Isser. The Isser is Balua.
No. But the whole thing is Aser. The whole thing is Aser.
Because of the Isser Balua.
Right.
Because you can't distinguish whether you're biting into the Isser Balua.
But it's a form of also of Hanan B'Shar Isurim. You understand that, right? I mean, why do you say Hanan B'Shar Isurim? What's the whole idea of saying Hanan altogether? It's only an Isser Balua. It's obviously more than just an Isser Balua.
Exactly, that's my point.
Not by Chal.
But Isser Balua would be less than Hanan. Because as you just said, Hanan is more than just Isser Balua.
Well, obviously, yeah.
So isn't the case of Isser Balua always the case where whatever was absorbed to the Isser, because it contains an Isser, you're not allowed to consume it?
Yeah, but let's take the following quick example. Where are we dealing with here? We're dealing with something that has already become Aser, falling into a Gedeira, and remaining Aser. Because of Efshar Lesochto, we say it's Aser. The Chal never was Aser. Okay?
When are we dealing with something that became Aser and falls into a Gedeira in that case?
We're talking about the Efshar Lesochto situation where something has an Isser Balua, falling into another Gedeira again.
So that you call it becomes an Isser Bachmas Atzmo?
No, it has become Aser before in the first time around.
So it's the Chal once it receives from the
so the Chal was not necessarily, for purposes of Bitul, yes. But remember, the Chal in itself is not Aser. I can have...
For purposes of a bittul, it's not Aser.
Right.
But for purposes of consumption, it is.
Yes, only because of the milk inside.
Correct,
if I
that's
can
an Isser Balua.
Right, somehow I can get that milk out.
So that's what we call an Isser Balua.
Right,
Okay, so the whole reason why the Chal is Aser is because of the Isser that's Balua. And that Isser is only Balua once it's cooked in the pot. As long before it cooked with other meat, whatever milk it contained was not an Isser Balua.
Right.
It only became an Isser Balua because of what milk left the Chal, mixed with the meat, and returned into the Chal.
Yes.
The returned milk into the Chal, that's what makes now, that's the Isser Balua, and that's what now prevents you from being able to consume the Chal itself. Is that correct?
Yes, right.
Okay.
Right.
So in that situation, what was the position? Why was he talking about it has to have become Aser? This became Aser in terms of Efshar Lesochto.
During the time of the cooking,
the
Chal does not become Aser yet. Doesn't have a din of Isser.
Aser in terms of consumption, or Aser in terms of being an Isser that Aser is something else?
In terms of consumption. Right.
Well,
obviously the milk that's coming out is going to affect.
It becomes absorbed again, we say, and then you're not allowed to eat the Chal because of the Isser Balua.
Remember, the whole thing here is at the Rabbanan too. It's not. But the Eved, it's okay. We're not dealing with the same category of Isser as we're in Hilchos Taaruvot. The whole Kachal, if it were to be cooked by itself.
It's a different case. There's no milk that's returning with an Isser.
Yeah, but even then it's a Chalav Shchuta. So we can't really compare the din of Chal with other Isser.
But it only becomes Aser. It only becomes Aser due to the Chalav Shchuta that mixed with returned into the Chal.
Yes, and even
so
then...
if I'm not cooking it with other meat, I don't have that case.
Right. But even then, it's not the same Isser as we have later on.
It's not Basar B'Chalav.
It's not Basar B'Chalav, right. And that's going to lead us to the next point of Hanan, of understanding over here, is this a form of Hanan or not a form of Hanan? In other words, someone to explain that there is a big chiddush over here. And perhaps that will, if we go through that diyun, we will be able to understand this halacha a little bit better. Because the machlokes here, between the various shitas, namely the Rambam and the Rashba, as to whether the Chal itself that became Aser, that it Asers again in the second time around, why then, if it Asers, can I use it to be Metzaref the second time around, right? The first time, okay, there's a heter. once there was no shishin the first time around, why can I be metzaref at the second time around?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so I think if we understand that, it will allow us to understand what's going on over here, because the diyun here appears to be there appears to be a chidush here, according to some, of whether you say chanan in basar b'chol of the rabbanan or not. Some say that that's the chiluk, some say not necessarily. The Taz says that that's exactly what the machlokes is between the Rambam and the Rashba is, because the Rambam is the one that says, yes, you could say that you're mesarefet even the second time around. And the Rashba, which is basically what the Ramah holds, says, no, the second time around you actually need shishim without the kchal. Okay? So that was the machlokes. Remember, the Rambam says you can use it, even the second time around. The dinim are exactly the same. It remains also, of course, on the one hand. On the other hand, you can be metzarefet to shishim. It's a special din of kchal. Rashba says, no, it's become a chaticha asura, and you cannot use it for shishim purposes. You need shishim besides it. Okay, so the Taz brings down that that's perhaps the chidush over here between the Rambam and the Rashba. The Rambam and the Mechaber hold that the kchal is mitzvah to shishim even in the second time, because sof there's no Isur Torah over here, right? There's no Isur min Torah, and there are also holds like that. So therefore, since there's no Isur Torah, there's nothing, no reason why the same thing that applies the first time should apply the second time. We allowed it the first time, allow it the second time. What's the big deal? There's no Isur Torah. The Rashba and the Ramah hold that in this case, in the second case, the kchal is not min aminyan, because obviously the second time, in a sense, this basar has become an avela. The basar, that's what he's implying. The first time I granted. The second time, once I said the kchal has become also because of the chalav, however you want to say it, it absorbed the tama basar. This piece of kchal is like an avela. It's like a chanan, and therefore it's like a chanan d'Rabbanan. Yeah. In other words, that this is it's like a basar b'cholav b'derabanan. There is such a thing as basar b'cholav derabanan. We've had that with chicken. We've had that. There are such examples of derabanan basar b'cholav. But here, we're saying that this hanan of sorts is like the isser of basar b'cholav derabanan. Whereas the Rambam would hold, no. The Rambam holds that when do you say basar b'cholav is nasan avela by basar b'cholav deraisa? You have that concept that this piece can become aser, like an avela, because of basar b'cholav, right? But not by the Rabbanan. How do we know the Rambam holds like that? The Rambam has an interesting halacha, though I don't think the Mechaber brings it down from what I recall. He brings down that and I mentioned that last time, that if you had milk that fell into a pot of chicken, there's no shishim. What's the din? The chicken is aser, right? Midrabano comes along, the Rambam says that even though right now it's aser, go ahead and add more chicken to the pot. I allow you to be mevatel isur lechatchila by the Rabbanan. Remember that? When we learned about bitul isur lechatchila, it's not such a problem by the Rabbanan. He allows you to add chicken to make it a shishin to be mevatel b'cholav. It should all be mutter. You know that you can't do that if there was a din of chanan. If you hold a din of chanan by basar b'cholav derabanan, if you say the chicken has become chanan, how could you add to it? You're not going to get it. You're not going to get it. You're not going to get anywhere. You're going to have more trouble. It's going to be more difficult.
It's going to be more chanan.
Yeah, right. So there, from that Rambam, you see that the Rambam holds there's such a thing as chanan by basar b'cholav derabanan. That's how someone explained it. Whereas the Rashba would say yes. Rabbi Elyahu has a whole diyan on here. He says it's lav dafka. It could be that kchal is different. From kchal, you don't have a raya that there's no such a thing as basar b'cholav, that there's no chanan by basar b'cholav derabanan. It just could be that the diyan of kchal is different because the mechaber holds, like the shitas, that even if the kchal was cooked by itself, b'di'evet, without anything, it would be mutter. He's mekel on it. So maybe because the mechaber's shita, or the Rambam's shita, goes with that deah, that kachal, b'di'evet, by itself, does not become aser, that is why they're permitting this too. In other words, it's a unique din l'gabi kachal. Don't say, Rabbi Elyahu says, don't bring me a raya necessarily that you have a big new chiddush of a halacha here, machlokes Rambam Rashba, that there's no chanan by basar b'chalav d'Rabbanan. Maybe there is. Maybe there can be. In other words, at least we don't know it's from here. Not necessarily that there is a machlokes. It just could be that the din of kachal is different. The chalav becomes usher, the basar by itself is really not a problem, and that's only b'di'evet. In other words, the chatchila, you have to of course take it out, but b'di'evet it's okay. So maybe that's why the mechaber here would be mekel, like that shita, because he's mekel even when it was cooked by itself. So it's not necessary. That's what Rabbi Elyahu says. He can't really prove from it that the din of chanan wouldn't apply in a basar b'chalav d'Rabbanan. Even though, I guess you can say that too. You can say that there are indicators. I mean, there are rayas that you wouldn't hold on a d'Rabbanan chanan. If anything, it would be just a chanan b'shari surim situation. But basar b'chalav d'Rabbanan, not necessarily. In other words, that either it's basar b'chalav d'oraisa or it's shari surim. In other words, it's not that there is also chanan by basar b'chalav d'Rabbanan, and therefore that the Rabbanan would be like the deraisa for those who hold only in basar b'chalav chanan. Follow me? In other words, and therefore, no, not necessarily. Okay, I thought that was very interesting. It's an interesting deal whether. He goes into this very, very nicely. All right, but anyway, that's as far as Sif Aleph and Sif Beis. Let's finish up with Sif Gimel and Dalet. These are small halachas, important halachas. Nevertheless, I mean, it's interesting. Kachal is different than any other basar. We had some concerns about the chalav. However, there are some leniencies, nevertheless, despite all our concerns. In Sif Gimel, the Mechaber says like this: Mutar lachtoch kachal roteach. If the kachal is hot, boiling, you're allowed to cut up a sakin shechatchu bo basar. You're allowed to take a fleishik knife from your drawer and cut up this kachal. Wow! I mean, you can't do that. You can't cut cheese with a fleishik knife, right? Even if it's cold. I mean, we don't use fleishik knife just like that for anything that has dairy, right? Here he says you can do it, no problem. Mutar lachtoch kachal roteach. It's hot. Besakin shechatchu bo basar.
No, the implication the kachal has still milk in it.
Okay, I mean, obviously that's our concern. Our concern is that there's always some milk left in it. Anyway, even after it's sleep, by the way, it's understood.
Even if you cut it,
it's understood from the Gemara.
And press it against the wall.
Yeah. It's a little bit, but very little bit. It's understood from the Gemara that even after it's sleep, there's always a little bit left over, but it's so little that it's not that significant. But here, the makor of this halacha is from Tosfos.
And what other knife would you use? What other knife could you possibly? What other knife?
A special knife, just like a special pot. Just like a special pot, yeah.
But what does it help you? As soon as you use the kachal knife with the hot piece of kachal, it becomes a fleishik knife.
Yeah, but we will see. I don't know if we saw it yet. There are some times where you put away a special kalim just for kachal.
All I'm saying is,
just like you have for salting meat. They had special things just for salting meat.
All I'm saying is, if you were to put away a special knife for kachal,
right,
then with respect to using that knife for other meat, it might help you. But because kachal itself is meat, as soon as you cut that kachal once with that knife, on the second time around, that knife would pose as much of a problem of cutting kachal with it as it would be cutting any of it.
No, I mean, you are right that if you cut kachal with it, it's a fleishik knife. Yeah.
And so the second time you use that knife, you're using a fleishik knife. On
the kachal.
Right. So you would have to buy a new knife each time you want to cut the kachal.
Yeah, but all right.
If it was a problem to use a fleishik knife or to use a knife that was used for kachal with meat, then the second time around you'd have that problem with this knife as well, because now it became a fleishik knife.
Yeah, but I see your point. But at the very least, you're using it only with kachal.
You don't have any problems with other.
You don't have exactly. Yeah. All right. But I see your point. Anyway, so this is taken from Tosfos. So let's see what's the story over there. In the Gemara over there, it explains that you're allowed to sli when you're roasting on a spit. It's called the shpud. You can do them two together, the kachal and the basar, as long as the kachal is down, is beneath the basar. You don't want the kachal dripping, the milk, whatever it is, a little bit coming down. Lechatchila not. Even if you cut it up, you don't want to do that. If you're going to roast them together, you want to have the chal underneath. So over there, it's understood from that Gemara, from that sugya, with the roasting, that we're not concerned. Remember, the chal is on the bottom. What's on the top? The basar. We're not concerned that the basar, shamnunis, is going to drip down on the chal.
That's interesting.
Yes, and we're not even concerned, as the Gemara explains, even from the tam, a balua of the basar in the shpud, coming into the kachal. Okay. That it's reabsorbed into the kachal. So,
you know what? It really sounds as though we only begin with the milk that is in the udder.
Yeah.
Once it separates from
yes,
the udder.
as we will soon see. Very good point.
And maybe
it becomes
that is
more
reminiscent of the calf drink milk. Only that this one is separated after the death of the cow, so it's still chalav shchuta. But since it's separated, there is already more of a little bit of this idea of separation.
Well, when milk separates, as we will see very soon, it becomes more of an issue by kavush. We'll talk a little bit about kavush soon. But so long as it's in the walls of the kachal, it's somewhat of a different din. But you're right, it will make a difference.
Because here we see clearly, as you said, when the fat of the meat drips on the kachal, chances are it will become absorbed and mixed with the milk that's in the kachal. No problem. But if that same milk drips on the meat, then it's already on more of a problem.
You know what this reminds
it's not a real problem.
It reminds me a different din, which is a little bit of a different din. You know, what happens with human blood?
Yeah.
Can you have human blood? No, you can't have human blood. But what about your own blood? Also not. But what about if you're biting an apple and there's blood coming out? That's okay.
Now, what if the blood went to the apple and you're the apple?
That's okay. That's what I'm saying. That's okay as long as you're eating it. You're not collecting the blood. It's not porush.
It's derech achila.
It's derech achila. Yeah, we're not concerned with that. I mean, there's no real issue in that blood anyway. But obviously there's a difference between while you're eating it as opposed to if the blood actually separated. And there's also, by the way, also an important chiluk by certain worms that grow.
Yeah,
Sure. On fruits.
One of the fish worms.
Yeah, if it's separated or if it grew with it, it can make a big difference. But by fish worms, it's a different question as to what kind of worm it is. Did it come from the outside?
That's the point that you're making.
Yeah.
Was that the fruit is seen? Did it come from the outside of the
Yeah, but the fruit, it's a little bit of a different din than by the fish. Where as far as where it develops. Yeah.
No, the fish, it's also.
No, it's.
There are certain worms come from the outside. So if it's that worm, it didn't develop in the fish.
Yeah, but you can have a you can have a situation by fruits where the worm starts off and then separates.
And the worm that's permitted in the fish is also the one that started it off and never left and never didn't.
It never left. That's the thing. Never left. That's the whole question, whether it never left or not. Yeah. All right. Anyway, so it makes a difference, as you say, but it makes a difference as to what kind of worm it is. In other words, as to what kind of worm and what is exactly mutter. Is it part of the thing or is it not part of the thing? I mean, anyway.
Wasn't it that the Rosh was famous for having said to just make sure I don't see the worms and it's okay?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There is something like that. Yes. All right. So anyway, with that sugya, from that sugya, the Rosh and the Rashba also learned, like Tosfos basically brings down, that we see that there's no hekbet. There's no reason to be machmir on the basar coming into the kachal. The basar coming into the kachal. Mm-hmm. And here we're talking about the halacha of cutting a kachal with a fleshik knife, the tam of the basar going into the kachal. We're not concerned about that. The only small machlokes over there between the Rishonim concerns whether the lemaskona from that sugya, are we talking about a kachal that has already been sliced up, cut up properly? Or would this even be if the kachal was not cut up and sliced up properly? That's the only machlokes. According to the Tosfos, Rosh, the Gemara is talking about only after kriya and ticha, after cutting it up. The Rashba says even if it was not cut up, even if the kachal was not cut up completely, we're not concerned. The concern of shamnunis, of fats coming from basar into the kachal, is not a problem. Very interesting that sometimes I find that the Rambam the Rashba is being machmer, and sometimes he's the one that's being makel. He's an example of the Rashba being makel completely. That the Gemara was talking about a case of even the kachal was not cut up. We're not concerned of the dripping of the basar on the kachal. The other way around is more of a concern, and even then, sometimes, depending on if it's In the Chatchila, no, but b'di'evet, if it dripped, it's okay because it's all burnt up by the fire anyway. It's not a big deal. The Chatchila, you have to be careful not to put the kachal on top. According to the Ramah, we would be concerned in that situation where if you did end up roasting it too, the one that's on top would be mutter, not the one that's on bottom. In other words, there are concerns about the kachal being on top, but the other way around, it doesn't appear to be a problem. The Rashba says that even if the kachal was not cut up. Now, what's the halacha? The halacha is like this. The mechaber did not really clarify here. He brings down in the Beis Yosef, if you look at the Beis Yosef in the Tur, he brings down the machlokes of the Rashba, the Tosis, and the Rosh, whether the Sugi is talking about a cut-up kachal or not. The mechaber doesn't say what kind of a kachal we're talking about here. But the Gra over here says that according to the mechaber, it's apparent that he would agree that it's even a kachal that was not cut up. I mean, if you read the mechaber, okay, so which kachal is it? I mean, it makes a difference. You brought it in the Beis Yosef. He discusses this machlokes in the Beis Yosef. Why doesn't he say it here? All it says is you can cut up a kachal roiseh b'sakin shechotchu b'basar. But the Gra over here says that the mechaber would probably go. It goes along like the Rashba, that this halacha is even in a case where the kachal is not cut up. If the basar is the one that's on top, everything is okay. We're going to see the Ramah inside. Before we go to the Ramah, in parentheses we have here, a very interesting parenthesis. As far as cutting up the kachal that's roiseh b'sakin shechotchu b'basar, we're using a fleishik knife to cut up the kachal. V'chol shekin kachal chai, af al pi shehi melei cholov. Here in parentheses you see that kol shekin, a kachal that is raw, chai means raw. It means alive, but it means raw here. What's the big deal about raw kachal? It's not roiseach. It's not roiseach, then we shouldn't really have the problem. Shehi melei cholov. That's what he points out, he emphasizes here, with the kachal that's chai, it's fresh. It has more milk, whatever that milk is. I mean, there's more of it than after you've roasted it. So, okay, you've roasted this kachal, it's hot, you come with the sakin, a fleishik knife, and you cut, okay, big deal. There's very little milk anyway in there. What's the problem of cutting it with a fleishik knife? Go ahead. What other knife should you use?
Because it's halach shchut, which is not a problem.
But if anything, there's very little left, right? We're talking about the kachal.
So there's very little of the non-problem.
Yeah.
Halach that's not a problem. So there's very little of something that's not a problem.
Yeah. Did you ever have some sineh?
Actually, I had seen it when the cows or the...
Yeah.
I had seen it when they take it out, you see they're spilling out from it.
Well, that's the milk that's spilling out, but there's still inside a little bit of halab. Yeah.
Right, correct.
So did you see how they prepare it, or that you didn't see?
I mean, they
Yeah.
Shabbos,
Yeah.
like syrup,
Yeah.
all those things.
All those things, all the internal organs and all the goodies. Yeah.
Yeah.
No cholesterol? No? It's okay? Anyway, I guess in Iran they use whatever they can, huh? They didn't waste anything.
Right, I mean, they take off the half of the cow, but there, all the ladies, they know how these veins out.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's from the other parts of the meat. So anyway, so here he says, Kol shekin kachal chai af al pi shehi mele'ah chalav, even though it's full of milk. In other words, when it's raw, yeah, but it's not hot. Yes, it's not hot, but it's full of milk. So the question is, what's the chiddush over here? So look at the Shach says something. The Shach explains it very nicely. He says, Kol shekin kachal chai. He says like this. The Shach says, beriv kosuv, it's brought down. He writes vafilu kachal chai. In other words, even the way you should read it is even if the kachal is raw, v'koi arebusan the chiddush is al shehim le'acholav. In other words, don't tell me that if it's full of milk then you can't do it. No, even if it's raw, and which means it's full of milk, it's still okay to do it. Ve'arav b'chaber shekosaf kol he used the word kol shekin instead of saying afilu. In other words, the more kol shekin is the more so. A kachal chai she'eno rosachas. What he meant was, if I allow you to use a fleishik knife on a kachal roiseyach, it's hot, the more so I will allow you to use a fleishik knife on a kachal chai, which is not hot. In other words, each one is, depending on how you read it, the chiddush could be even if it has, while it's raw, even while it has milk, or, which has a lot of milk, which everybody's pretty much in agreement. that if it's raw and it has still more milk than it would be after it's roasted, still it's mutter. Or you learn pshat that it's that afilu chai. I'm sorry, like the Ramah, kol shekin shechal chai, when it's cold. Well, obviously, if I allow it when it's hot, I'm going to allow it when it's cold. Yes, you're right. That's another problem of knife duchka de sakina, or shechting, which in itself produces a certain amount of pressure. Yeah, and we'll be learning that in Halacha Basar B'Chalav. The Halacha is concerning cutting onions. The onion itself being something sharp presents a separate problem, even though we're not dealing with heat. We're dealing with something sharp, right? We're dealing with a sakin. And here, when you have a combination of a sakin, you have something sharp, then you have a lot of different halachas. Like, for example, there would be a concern even about Eino Ben Yoima. Remember that one?
I even remember B'chal Yilish.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that. These
that
are,
was, by the way, if you recall, Barry
Yeah.
Gruber came a few times to
Yeah.
did Aliyah.
yes.
That was his favorite topic, B'chal Yilish.
Yeah.
We spent
So we'll,
weeks
yeah.
and weeks about it.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that when we get to that. So here we're talking about using a fleshik enough, no problem, right? And that's all learned from that sugya of that no concern of basar or shanunis of basar, the fat, coming down the kachal. The other way around, we have some concerns, as we will soon see with Hilchas Melicha of the kachal. I mean, obviously, you don't want to roast them together. You don't want to cook them together. But if you do it, you want to make sure that the basar preferably is on top of the kachal, and like the kachal is on top of the basar. V'chein mutar lachol basar b'sakin shechotchu bo chal. The Chaver goes on. You can also cut up meat with the sakin that you cut up chal with. V'chein adin lechol zeh b'kli sheochlu zeh b'zeh. No problem. You can eat chal in a fleishike plate. You can eat basar in a plate of chal. In other words, we don't have chumras after the fact. After the fact, it's been cooked, it's been roasted. We don't have those concerns anymore. As far as the machlokes, the gabe, what we said before, are we talking about a chal that it was cut up or not? I think everybody agrees that b'di'evet it's okay, even if it was not cut up. We're still not concerned with the shanunis. The question is lechatchila is the sugya talking about chal that is cut up or not? But b'di'evet it's not a problem. And that's how the Shach learns too. Chochmas Odom I saw also brings down that if the chal is cold and it was never cut up at all, and it's not cut up and it's not cooked, you're allowed to use a fleshik knife even lechatchila. In other words, if it's cold, we're not going to be concerned. It's only the question is if it's hot. Well, if it's hot, it wasn't cut up lechatchila. Obviously, you want to be careful. But it's okay.
No, so are you saying that?
No. So the Chochmas Adam basically says if you have a piece of kal that was just cut up, and you want to prepare it, it's cold.
No, but when it's hot, it's a problem.
We had that machlokes when it's hot. Whether are we talking about that it was cut up properly or not?
Okay.
But the evidence, yes, it's mutter. The question is lechatchila. Are we saying the sugya is talking about a kachal that was only cut up? Then go ahead and use a fleshik knife, or even if it wasn't cut up, it was just roasted. Go ahead and, well, if it was not cut up, maybe you shouldn't lechatchila, and that's the machlokes. But the evidence, it's okay. So that's what the Chochmas Sottim says.
But the evidence means that you already cooked it, not
but the evidence, if you did not know, but the evidence means if you did not cut it up.
Right. But if you didn't cut it up and you already cooked it, now you're at the b'di'evet case. Now it's b'di'evet. Now you can use a fleshik.
You can use a fleshik knife.
Or are you saying that b'di'evet, if you use the fleshik
No. B'di'evet, you can use a fleshik knife.
L'hatchila, you can use the fleshik knife. It's b'di'evet that you cooked it without cutting.
Yeah. I believe so, yeah. I believe so, yes. Because the Chochmas Adam says when it's cold, it's for sure not a problem lechatchila. If it's cold, we don't have that concern.
So there the l'hatchila would be using the knife, because l'hatchila can't be going on cooking and taking it out. Or is it you're talking about a cooked one?
No, it's not cooked fresh. The Chochmas Adam brings a case of fresh chal. It's just, you haven't cooked it, it hasn't been nothing has been done to it.
So it's not cooled down after.
The first step should be to cut it up.
So what would the l'hatchila?
You're allowed to use a knife, a fleshik knife, to cut up slices of it.
So according to him, if it was cooked without being cut up, the b'di'evet would be regarding if it's the knife.
Can you use the knife?
Yeah.
Can you use the knife?
Right.
Can you use the knife?
So by him it would be you can't, but b'di'evet, if he said it's okay. So the b'di'evet by Chochmas Adam would go on the knife, not on the kachal. Because if the latchila was by when it wasn't cooked on the knife and not the kahal, because the kahal there is no latchila, because you didn't cook it. You didn't cook it
here yet, yeah.
Right, so there's no latchila, the other. So he must be talking about the latchila using the knife, so that the diavad will also be using.
Yeah. Apparently, the machloikes is on the lechatchila of can I use knife?
Right.
Okay, I mean altogether, because he says mutar lach chal reseach. So the question is, if it was not, you shouldn't. You shouldn't use a sakin, a fleshkin knife.
But the
evidence we did,
continue using it with meat.
So you're right. I think that would be the way to learn it. In other words, obviously, those who hold that it was not done, was not cut up, then you shouldn't do it, because the sugya was only referring to if it was cut up. So if you say the sugya is only referring to something that was cut up, then obviously the chatchili didn't do it. If you did it, it's okay. Yes, I guess so. I guess you're right. Yeah. Yes. All right. So that was Sif Gimel. The Ramah. You can use the same spit, same barbecue that you use for khal to do rib steaks. You can put it in the same pot, same plate as roasted meat.
Excuse me. Because when you're talking about, the question is whether you can flesh a knife
A kachal, right.
that has not been
Pre-cut properly.
Right.
So when it's cold,
two cuttings.
Yeah, but you're
What
right.
do you use for the first cutting?
Yeah. No. Let's say somebody has a kachal. You just, cut, the sheikhet or whoever is in Salah just brought it to him. And he says, okay, I don't know how they prepare kachal, but he wants to cut it up in pieces. Maybe he wants to make a ground meat then. I don't know. He wants to, it's a big piece. So what knife can he use for this? Can he use a regular fleischiket knife? When something is cold, it's always less of a problem, right? Even though you're cutting it with a knife, it's always less of a problem. Even with a treif knife, it's going to be less of a problem, right? I mean, completely treif, it's cold, okay? So the question over here, however, is, there's chalav in it. And the chatchila, you don't want to do it. Obviously, there's some sort of chalav still there. But it's cold. So the Chochmas Adam says, even though it's not cut up, which means that you have not done the proper cutting up of the chal with special tools to squeeze out the chalav, the chalav is still there, you can still use any knife, a fleischiket knife, the chatchila, to slice it up into smaller pieces, manageable pieces, because it's cold.
What are the special?
No.
There are no special. No, I use the term special tools because when you go ahead and prepare chal, you're going to be making slices in it vertically and horizontally and squeezing out. So you may have a special knife for that.
You don't need to have it because it's cold. We're only concerned if you cooked it without cutting it. If it's hot,
right. So I was going to say what Ilan said. Basically, even for that cutting process of vertically and how you can use a fleischiket knife too.
Sure. We're only concerned
it's
if
cold.
You cooked it and it's hot.
Right.
You cooked it and it's
Yeah.
hot.
That's the chiddush of the chiddush of the halacha is chal roiseach. Oh, chal roiseach. There may be some milk in there left. Can I use a fleischiket knife for it? The Chaber says yes. You're allowed to.
If it was cut up properly. So the question is, if it wasn't cut up properly,
right, so
it was cold, and it is hot.
So the Gross says that the Mechaber goes like the Rashba probably, that the Sugya was talking about even a chal that was never cut up properly, right? It's hot, roasted. Can I cut it up with a fleischiket knife? It was never cut up properly. Yes, most of the milk is out anyway. And even if there is a little bit left, it's chalav shchuta. It's not a problem.
So here you're saying, according to the Mechaber L'Chachila, you're allowed to, and the Chochmas Adam is saying,
No, the Chochmas Adam is only talking about cold. His example...
No, by cold you'd allow it.
Cold, everybody pretty much allows.
Right, when he says, so L'Chachila he says you're allowed, would be by cold.
By cold, yeah. But the Mechaber says go ahead and cut such a chal that is rosech, even though the cutting up was never done to it, and it still may have within its gumais, the pockets, some milk, as opposed to cutting it up properly. You probably took out most of it. Yeah.
The same pot, the same spoon,
Right.
the same plate, the same knife.
Right.
Talking about the cold item, or is he using one right from one to the other? Does he really put the kahal
Yeah.
and over the same plate?
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
Okay.
Yeah, he says, when we have these chumras about basar and gvina, legabe pots, plates, forks and knives and things like that, we don't have that. We're not going to be machmer so far as to say, use separate dishes. In other words, go ahead. You can use the same shput for both of them. You can put it in the same bowl. Well, at the same time, the shpud, when you're barbecuing, the Ramah would say, don't do it. Don't barbecue at the same time.
Stick the next one right away.
Yes, right away.
And
You
it's
clean
like,
it up.
You should clean up the shamnunis. I saw somebody bring down that if you actually have be'ain, that you should remove it.
But it's more marzai, bro.
Yeah, I think that's what I saw somebody bring down. If you actually saw you had shamnunis, yeah.
I can put.
Yeah, you can use it for both.
Cooked, I can put two of them on the same time.
Yes, that's what the Ramah is adding over here, right? So in other words, we don't have all these chumras. We have them only when about cooking together, perhaps roasting together, one on top of the other, things like that. But not as far as using the kalim, the pots, the pans. Even they're both hot. You can put them at the same time in the same plate. One is the first course, the second one is the second course. After you've roasted it, it's just like any other meat for any other purpose. But now, all of this is dafka shenitzla. Kedinoi, it was roasted properly. What does properly mean? You cut it up, sliced it up properly. You pressed it against the wall, you squeezed it on the mill. This is only the Ramah. The Ramah is a little bit more machmir than the mechaber. He says, if you went ahead and did sliya, which is better than bishul in some ways, right? But it's a heat. But you never did it with kriya, or you did a kriya mu'et, as a very little bit of a kriya. The Ramah would be machmer. Don't use the same barbecue. Don't use the same pot. So only the Ramah, right? We hold that b'di'eved it's okay if you didn't cut it up. Everybody said cut it up. Do it properly. Do it right. The Ramah says if you didn't do it right, lechatchila don't.
You're right, Ken. Just now you said the Ramah says and we hold. We all hold. The Ramah says. So I was wondering, does that mean that, generally speaking, don't follow the Ramah with respect?
No. Yes, the Ashkenazim follow the Ramah.
Okay.
Yeah. That as we saw in the first even what the minhag is. Even the mechaber has his own minhag. That in today the minhag is all over the world. You don't cook kachal together with meat, even though you sliced it up properly.
Even the Sfardim don't.
Huh? The Sfardim? Yeah, even the Sfardim. We don't cook it together. But if you did, it's okay, b'di'eved. According to Ramah, it's problems, b'di'eved. Well, did you cut it up or not? It's going to make a difference or not.
So when you say,
remember?
If you did, it's okay, according to the Mechaber.
Yeah.
But for the Ashkenazim, they follow the Ramah in respect to the...
Yeah, sometimes it would only be mutter behefsed meruba, and that's if you cut it up. Yeah.
Even with respect to the other, Ashkenazim follow the Ramah, they don't follow the Mechaber in the East.
Right. Yeah. Most of the time. There may be a taz or a bach, as we will soon see, just another halacha or two, where there are, even amongst Ashkenazim, there is chumras and kulas. It depends if you hold like the taz or like the shach. As you will see, the taz has a whole shita about kavush. I don't know if we need to go into all those shitas, but we'll briefly just touch on them. So here he says, all of this is lechatchila. Also, in other words, all of these lechatchila also if you didn't do it properly. Ubedi'eved akol muter. Now, im karoi kedinoi betzoloi, if you did cut it up properly and then you went ahead and roasted it, even if you find a little bit of pockets with some sort of liquid there that looks like milk, ein lochush. Don't be concerned about it. All right. In other words, he says, do everything right, no problem. If you didn't do everything right, there's lechatchila and there's the bedi'eved, the Ramah. Then he adds, "V'chein iminichol kach sholem koidem sliyoso im chalovoy." You don't want to pronounce it chelboy because chelboy would be it's chelev. When it says here, it's talking about chalovoy. That's how that would be the correct vowels. Iminichol koidem. If you had a kachal sitting right after the shechita, a whole day before you roasted it with its chalovoy, with its milk, yom shalom, it's sitting. What am I going to think? Oh, kavush. Maybe it's being covered. Remember the term kavush? Sitting in water, sitting in the liquid, sitting in sear. Well, here it's sitting in milk, in a sense. It's not really sitting. So that's the thing here. Is it really sitting? Some say yes, it's a form of kavush. There's a whole big discussion about this, and I don't know if we need to go into it. I don't think too many people are going to have this concern. But the Ramah brings it down that obviously it presents a problem if it's sitting. But you know what? It's not real kavush. אם הניחו כך שולם קודם סליוסי וחלוב יום שולם מותר. ולא אומרים לכובש כמבושל בכי היי גבנה. In this particular position, in this particular scenario of this piece of kachal sitting by itself, it's not immersed in the liquid, it's not immersed, by the way, in chalav that came out of the kachal. If you had a scenario where chalav came out of the kachal, somehow you got it out, it's porosh like you said before, and now you take this kachal and immerse it, dip it in, then you would still maybe have
more of a problem.
More of a problem. Some say no, even in that case.
Still chalav shchuta.
Exactly. Not only is it chalav shchuta, some, like the Taz goes into this, would say this is a gzera legzera. Because even basar mechalav midoraisa, kavush is not a problem. Right? So here, but nevertheless, everybody would agree that chalav sheporash is going to be more of a problem. Like you said, more of a problem.
So now I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How about chalav shchuta,
Right.
in which you are making kavush a piece of chicken? So you have kavush, zera.
Yeah.
You have
Okay.
chalav shchuta, zera.
Good question.
and
You
chicken
understood the
is
question of
also
Ilan?
zera.
You understood the question of Ilan? Basically, you may have like a triple gzera here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they talk about it.
Delicious chicken soaked and
Sauteed or soaked or whatever, yeah. Yeah.
Chalav
The
shchuta.
reason why we wouldn't allow it is because the first one is not really a gzera. When we say chalav with chicken is asr, it's no longer a gzera. It's asr, just like any other isser. The first isser of chicken with milk is no longer, we don't treat it as a gzera per se. We treat it as an isser, the Rabbana, which is קיהן דאורייסה, קיהן. קיהן דאורייסה meaning that they were...
It has the same authority.
It has the same authority, they consider this exact same thing. Chicken is meat. We wait 6 hours, we treat it exactly the same. So it no longer has the chashash or the gzera status of other concerns of kavush and so forth. So that's why we would obviously we would not allow it.
It would not be a case that is this putting it into chalav.
In other words, that would not be a case where we would say we don't make a gzera legzera. This case we would say yes, we would make a gzera legzera because the first one is not a real gzera. It's already
So it's like taking a piece of
Yes.
cow milk and put it into chalav shchuta.
cow milk,
Cow meat.
cow
Put it
meat.
into chalav shchuta.
Yes, in a sense,
would
it
not
would
be
be
the
almost the same thing. Yeah. So so we just said the Ramah says that this is not a real kavush. Let's see the last seif now. Before we go to the last seif, just an interesting shach here that I saw in legabe all the things that are mutter lechatchila, and sometimes they're not mutter lechatchila. And I was using the same pots and pans and so forth, depending on if it was processed properly. The shach brings down at the end here that the reason why you're allowed to use the same pots lechatchila many times. I mean, we're not concerned. This is not the same din of cooking lechatchila kachal in the same pot as meat.
I didn't get that.
Hold on a second. This is not, I'm sorry, the Shach says this is not the same as the other chumrah where we have that you cannot cook a kachal in a k'dera by itself. Okay?
Cannot close the chal by itself.
Without kriya, without cutting it up.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Latchila.
Over there's a gzera, you may come to cook them together. Therefore, we say don't even cook it by itself in a k'dera. Here, putting it in a k'dera, not cooking it together, just sitting in the same pot, pan, spoons and forks and knives with regular meat, I don't have that k'dera. Oh, you may come to cook it together. You're eating it together. No. We only make that gzera by cooking it by itself. You don't cook the Ramah says don't cook, even the Mechaber. Mechaber says by with other basar. Actually, the Chaber says you can do it by itself, but just don't do it with other basar. The Ramah says the Ashkenazim hold don't cook chal even by itself. Sli, yeah. Roast, yes.
Even if it was cut properly?
Yes. The Ashkenazim don't cook chal.
Even if it was cut properly, it's sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even alone.
Yeah. Let's see. No, I get lechatchila lekor shetim v'tchila v'koisum yum. Yeah, let me see. He brings it. Ulegdeira below basar noegim bo isor lechatchila. Wodin the tagging to fry it, even if it's dried up. But im overu bishlu b'gdera levad b'diavad mutar nikra shetik ve'erev b'tocha b'koisel. That's the meaning of the Ramah, and pretty much everybody follows this. We will see that same thing with by the way, with covered with liver when we learn Hilchas Melicha. Very important. This is actually much more relevant than Kachal. How to properly prepare liver. What not to do with liver. Okay? Now, so the Ramah says you don't cook Kachal by itself, even if you did it properly. Machaber's minig is not to do with other basar. I'm concerned with other basar, not to do with other basar, but by itself, if you do it properly, it doesn't seem to be an issue. And sleep for sure is not a problem. Now, so I thought this shach was interesting that he says, just don't think that this should be the same like over there. Over there we have a real gzera. You shouldn't do it by itself. You may come to cook it with other basar. Don't have him. In other words, don't cook it in the same in a gdera. Why? Because you may come to cook it with these. Eating it together, we don't have that gzera. I thought that was interesting. Here by sakin, you cut up with a sakin of flesh. We don't say, oh, gzera, you may come to cook them together. No, we don't go that far. To cook the kachal and the gdera, there is that chashash. You may one day cook it together with other meat. Don't do it by itself, even if it's properly sliced up. Now, another very interesting point here is brought down by the Bach. The Bach says that after you roasted the kachal, you can't cook it lechatchila. I would think, I roasted it, I got all the milk out. Go ahead, do whatever you want from it now. Marinate it, cook it. No, the Bach says don't. As we're going to see that by tzli. By kovid. By kovid, it's not such a problem. By kovid, by liver, once you've done it on the fire properly, if you want to later on cook it, go ahead. I never understood what kind of a dish that would be. You first roasted it, and now you want to cook it.
If it can last.
The kachal? Well, I don't.
Because it's thin.
It's thin, yeah.
Yeah, so roasted,
maybe
it burns out. And
well, maybe just a little bit. Maybe it's not done as much as covered. Covered, you really have to do it well to get all the blood out.
Right.
So anyway, that's what the Bach says. Like gabekal, you want to cook it after you roast it, you can't. It's not. It does not have the same thing as covered. Why? Because he says that even if you did sleep first, not all the milk came out. There's still a little bit left. So you can't cook it. And the Marshal paskins like that. The Taz holds that that's only lechatchila asur. The Torah Chata says it's mutter, and it's also, I think you understood that from the Shach too, that there shouldn't be a problem to cook it after you roast. Once you roasted it, you took care of it. All right.
I don't buy it from.
Yeah, go ahead.
I had seen this. He sells.
Really?
Yeah.
What does he sell?
It's a soup out of chal and stuff.
Oh, yeah? Oh, let me know. Yeah.
Right off
We
to
can
the
bring
side
a
of
sample,
the,
Yeah.
where the glass
Yeah.
mark is
Right.
Maybe we can bring a
Yeah.
sample up to the class.
Right. Yeah. Okay, let's see this last halacha of Siman, Tzadik, the last halacha here, Legabe Chal. Halacha Daled, Tzif Daled. Litzlos kachal o lemolchoi im habosar, dino ketzlias o melichas covered in bosar. As far as roasting kachal or salting together with other basar, has the same dinim as roasting or salting liver with basar. What are those halachas of liver with basar? Well, when you do liver with basar, whether it's salting, and you should really never salt them together, really, but when you salt or you roast liver together, the halacha is the liver should not be on top. The liver has more blood than the regular basar. So when he says here, as far as the halacha of roasting kachal or salting the kachal with other meat at the same time together, it would have the same din as tzlias or mlichas covered in basar. Now he says, "Veyesh mishematir." There is an opinion that says it's completely okay without any problem. Shematir limloach kachal al habasar, which is the other way around, right? You can even do it on top. Who is who? Famous machlokes rishonim. The gabe salting kachal with basar, and of course this applies to tzli too. But the Melicha is the way it works is like this. The Rashba holds the famous concept of meliach keroiseach. Salting something produces a heat similar to tzli. When we say rotseach, we're talking not the rotseach of bishul, we're talking about the rotseach of tzli. It's different. It affects the surface, unless it's shuman, unless it's fatty. But anyway, meliach is keroiseach, the tzli. So therefore, what is the problem? If you're going to have the kachal on top of the basar, it's going to be also even b'diavad. Since Melicha has an effect of tzli, And by Sli we say we should not have the kachal on top. You can have the kachal on the bottom, but you should not have the kachal on top. So he says it's also even the Yevid. Even if the kachal is on the bottom, also lechatchila to do it, but the Yevid it's mutter. Because it's together, you shouldn't do it lechatchila, but the Yevid it's mutter. Now, it's understood, by the way, that this halacha, I think, of Melicha with regular meat and kachal is only beli ticha, without kriya and ticha, without cutting up the kachal. Then it's more of a problem. Then, especially if the kachal is on top. Now, Rosh holds, guess what? That Melicha is not completely like Tzliya. For our purposes over here, Melicha is not like Tzliya at all here. Why? Very simple. He says, chemically speaking, salt can draw blood out, but salt is not going to draw milk out. Whoever said that Melicha should be like Yore Deah, like Tzli, to draw out, in other words, it has this power to draw out the blood. Okay, I grant you, it draws out blood. Well, as we're going to learn Hilchos B'ezrat Hashem, it does not draw out milk.
So then he is...
Just go ahead, you can salt them together.
Then he's completely rejected his Yore Deah bechlal, Basar bechlal.
No, only legabe this, legabe kachal, legabe inyonenu, legabe our topic, says Melicha is not like a rosette, that it's going to draw out what?
But his argument that it can't affect the milk the same way it affects blood would hold true by regular milk as well.
That what?
His argument is that salt is unlike heat because salt cannot draw out the milk, and therefore in our case it apply like heat, which does draw out the milk. So that would say should apply, logically speaking, by regular milk as well. Salt cannot draw out milk, and therefore salting anything that contains milk with it should not be we should Melicha Yore Deah.
No, over there it's different. We're not talking about drawing out. In case of Basar bechalov, we're not talking about drawing it out.
So
here we're talking. We're actually they're touching each other. They're going to be mavliya one into the other.
So mavliya yes, but polet no.
Well, here we're talking about drawing out.
Yes, so according to him, drawing out yes, but drawing out the salt cannot affect, but pushing it in.
Yeah, if they're in close proximity, he doesn't say those words, but maybe you can say that because of the dinim of Basar bechalov. Obviously, there's still the dinim of Meliach Keruser Basar bechalov.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. So here he's just talking about the nature of Melicha here will not present a problem because in this particular scenario, it will not draw out the milk from the kachal. So, he says, in other words, the mechaber just brings down.
So my question to put it simply, is this formulating because of Chalav Shchuta?
No.
Or does he in general hold...
In general, he holds Melicha does not draw out milk. He says it very clearly. It only draws out blood.
So in the קיהן...
It has other qualities. Salt has other qualities. It preserves and so forth. But it does not, what our concern here is about the chalav coming out. It will not come out with salting it.
So a hypothetical situation, the stomach of it just milked before it was... so it has to
we're going to see that in Ramah.
According to him?
We're going to see that in Ramah. That's the next halacha. So let's discuss. So all the mechaber says, the mechaber brings down the halacha, but what he does is, yesh mishematir, some allow, who is that? The Rosh. When he says, there are some who allow us to salt the kachal with the basar, who is that? It's the Rosh. What's the halacha, by the way, when the mechaber brings down stam and yesh mishematir? Who does he hold like? He holds like the stam. Whenever you see a mechaber bringing down his opinion, bringing down the halacha, then he says, yesh mishematir. Obviously, he's bringing it down because it's an important halacha. We should consider it. But how does he hold really between the two? He holds like the first opinion.
That prohibits it.
That prohibits
what if it's reversed?
Lechatchila.
What if it's reversed? The stam permits yesh mishe...
Makes no difference. Stam veyesh mishe omer, when you have those two, halacha kistam. Yeah.
I've heard actually opinions that, is there such a thing?
Could be. Can't think of it right now. Yeah. Okay, let's just, in the last Ramah on that, ve'en lemolcho im basar, the Ramah says, therefore, I also say you don't salt it with basar, but the eved, b'chol inyan mutter. Says, either way, it's okay, it's mutter. In other words, what does it mean, b'chol inyan, even if you didn't cut it up? Because, why? Because the Ramah says, I agree with the Rosh in a sense. He has a point. Otherwise, why would he say b'diavad it's mutter, even if you didn't cut up the kachal? Because he says the Rosh has a point. We don't have to be so machmer. But lechatchila, we're going to be machmer. We're not going to salt it together, but the evidence is going to be okay. One more din in the Meramah is the Or HaKeva. What if you want to make sirabi, right? Well, actually, this is from the keva, not from the where sirabi is from the intestines. The keva is the stomach, but it's the same thing. They use the or, the skin of the keva. Or HaKeva la'achar shehusa chalovoi. After you remove the milk from the keva, now this is keva having milk. If you remove, this is a calf that had milk. This or that after you remove the milk, and you washed it, you rinsed it well. After you've done all that, you rinsed it well. Yeshlo din shar basar. It's equivalent to any other meat. Mutar lemolchem shar basar ve'eno din kachal klal. And then you can salt it together with any other meat. It does not in any way resemble kachal. Just because it used to have milk sitting there, you rinsed it out, you washed it out, you took it out. It's okay. You can go ahead and salt it. Now, Rabbi Kiva Eger on this says something very interesting. Rabbi Kiva Eger says, and he learns it out from the Hilchos Melicha somewhere. I didn't have a chance to check it, where he learns this from. He says, we're talking about the second salting. There's the first and second. What's the first? First is to draw out blood. Okay, it's like any other meat. He says what is mutter over here is to salt them together later on for preserving purposes. That's called the second salting. Is when you want to preserve. You can go ahead and preserve them together. But don't salt it, he says, the first time around when you're getting the blood out of both. Well, obviously there's some concern. That's what Rabbi Kiva Eger, he's the only one that I saw saying that. The Ramah seems to be saying that after you've rinsed the Ora Keva, there's no problem. It behaves like any other meat. And finally, I saw that the Darchei Moshe brings down that the proper thing to do is before you do go ahead and salt the kachal, is cut it up. In other words, don't cut it up later on. You're going to be salting it right now. The cutting up of the kachal that we've learned how to do with the sheti, berav, techal, the koisel, that should be done before the salting, not later on. So in other words, apparently it's better, even though we may hold like the rush, even though you can say, it's what's the big deal? Maybe it's just better to salt it that way, to prepare it that way. If you did not, but the evidence was not always all of this is a din in lechatchila. Okay, so we're done with Siman Tzadik. Mitzvah Hashem, next week we'll begin Tzadik Aleph. We'll do as much as we can on Tuesday and Thursday before Pesach.